weeks on the run.
Danny Brown was arrested by U.S. Marshals at an apartment complex in Dallas, Texas. Brown is accused of going to his estranged wife's house on March 27th, where he shot and killed her. Marshals tracked Brown to a Dallas apartment over the weekend.
When they got there, Brown attempted to jump off the balcony, but then saw more officers and law enforcement on the ground. A short time later, he surrendered to police. He'll now be extradited back here to Arkansas.
She was a mother of 6, a businesswoman, a dance coach, a woman who had already survived what most people wouldn't. In 2012, Edwina Brown was ambushed by 2 gunmen inside her mother's home. Her boyfriend was shot dead right in front of her. She was hit twice, once in the chest, once in the hip, but she lived. She survived. Everyone knew who was behind it: her ex, Danny Brown. He didn't pull the trigger that day, but according to court documents, he paid 2 men to do it for him. They were promised a car and some cash. One got life. The other turned himself in. Danny, he walked free. Why? Because the one person who could seal the case, Edwina, refused to testify. Then, just 2 weeks after barely escaping with her life, she married him. Yes, she married the man who tried to have her killed. And for more than a decade, Edwina lived with that choice. She raised her kids, built her brand, coached girls in her dance company, with her own daughter as team captain. From the outside, it looked like she had turned the page. But the final chapter hadn't been written yet. On March 27, 2023, Edwina Brown was found shot inside her home in Little Rock, Arkansas. Her killer didn't need a hired gun this time. He did it himself. This wasn't just another domestic violence case. This was a woman who had already survived attempted murder by the same man who would eventually take her life. What happened in those 11 years between the first attempt and the final one? Why did she go back? And how did this story come full circle in the worst possible way? If this story already has your jaw clenched, you're not alone. Have you ever heard of a case this disturbing? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if you're drawn to real stories that deserve to be heard. This is Dark Trace Crime Stories, where we give voice to the victims and expose the truths that can't be ignored. Because Edwina Brown's story isn't just tragic, it's terrifying. And it's real. Edwina Brown was born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, the youngest of 4 siblings in a family where love and loyalty were a way of life. From the beginning, she stood out. Whether it was her quick wit, bold personality, or the kind of laughter that made a whole room pause, Edwina had a presence you couldn't ignore. She graduated from high school in Little Rock and later earned an associate degree, setting her sights on building a stable life for herself and her children. She became a phlebotomy technician, a job she took seriously, not just because it paid the bills, but because she believed in helping people. She worked long hours, sometimes juggling multiple responsibilities, just to ensure her kids had everything they needed. But Edwina's ambition didn't stop at stability. She wanted more, not just for herself, but for the community around her. That's how Bedoja's Beauty Boutique was born. It wasn't just a side hustle, it was her vision. Through her boutique, she uplifted other women, offering style, confidence, and sisterhood. Her brand was more than clothes. It was an extension of who she was: bold, unapologetic, and full of heart. That same energy flowed into her role as a dance coach. For 4 years, Edwina led the Bejeweled Dance Company, mentoring young girls both on and off the stage. Her daughter was the team captain, a role earned, not given. Together, they built something special, a space where self-expression, discipline, and pride were taught through rhythm and movement. For many of the girls on her team, Edwina wasn't just a coach, she was a second mother. On social media, she was known for her candor and charisma. She shared raw reflections about motherhood, survival, and starting over. Her posts were honest, often humorous, and always rooted in love. And people listened because she was real. Danny Maurice Brown entered Edwina's life during her younger years, long before the chaos, before the headlines. At first, he was charming in the way many abusers are. Quietly intense. Protective. The kind of man who wanted to know where she was, who she talked to, and what she was doing, at all times. What looked like love at the beginning was something else entirely. Danny had a history. By the time they were seriously involved, he already carried a criminal record that included violent offenses. Over time, the charm faded, and a darker pattern emerged: jealousy, aggression, and control. People around Edwina began noticing changes. Her world seemed to get smaller. She started pulling away from friends, distancing herself from social events, and making herself less visible outside of her obligations. Family members would later describe Danny as controlling and physically abusive. He didn't always need to raise his voice. His presence alone could silence a room. What began as emotional manipulation quickly escalated into physical violence. Edwina endured it quietly, believing, like many women do, that things might eventually improve, or that leaving might only make things worse. She tried to leave, more than once. But every time she did, Danny's behavior intensified. He wasn't just angry, he was possessive, as if walking away from him was a betrayal that needed to be punished. The turning point came in 2012. By then, Edwina had finally built up the courage to break free. She found new love in a man named Daniel Hill, a relationship that brought her peace and a sense of normalcy she hadn't felt in years. Daniel treated her with respect. He wasn't interested in control. He just wanted to be with her. Danny couldn't accept it. The idea of Edwina with someone else pushed him over the edge. Jealousy became rage, and rage became action. Instead of moving on with his own life, Danny began plotting. According to later court documents and testimony, he offered 2 men cash and a car to kill Edwina and Daniel. He didn't just want them gone, he wanted them silenced. This wasn't an outburst. It was premeditated, cold, calculated, and it nearly worked. Edwina's story with Danny wasn't just marked by one act of violence. It was a chain of escalating control. From isolation to beatings, from threats to attempted murder, the pattern was clear. Danny wasn't going to stop. Not when she tried to leave. Not when she moved on. Not even after he nearly took her life. Still, despite everything he put her through, the story didn't end there. For Edwina, Daniel represented a chance to rebuild. They spent time together, slowly creating a relationship based on trust, away from the shadows of the past. But Danny Brown could not accept that Edwina was moving on without him. He hired 2 men too. On a quiet day in 2012, Edwina and Daniel visited her mother's home in Little Rock, unaware that death was waiting just outside. The 2 hired attackers lay in wait, prepared to carry out the grisly task. As soon as Edwina and Daniel entered the house, chaos erupted. Daniel fought fiercely to protect Edwina, but the attackers were ruthless. He was shot in the head and killed instantly. His life ended in an instant, in front of the woman he loved. Edwina, meanwhile, was struck twice, once in the chest and once in the hip. The pain was searing, but something inside her refused to give up. Despite the severity of her wounds, Edwina found the strength to crawl away and hide under her mother's chair, hoping to escape further harm. The gunman fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of terror and heartbreak. Miraculously, Edwina survived the attack, but was left with wounds that would take weeks to heal, both physically and emotionally. The investigation moved swiftly. Local law enforcement and federal agencies worked together to unravel the attack, gathering evidence from multiple sources. Phone records revealed suspicious calls, and witness accounts pointed directly to the hired gunman. Anonymous tips soon led to the arrests of the 2 hitmen involved. Under pressure, one of the men confessed and implicated Danny Brown as the mastermind behind the brutal attack. Evidence piled up. Surveillance footage, phone records, and testimonies all painted a damning picture of Danny's role in orchestrating the violence. He was charged with capital murder and attempted murder, facing what appeared to be an open and shut case. But then, in a move that stunned everyone who followed the case, Edwina refused to testify against Danny. The reasons behind her decision remain a matter of speculation. Some suggest fear, others trauma bonding, and some believe hope for change may have clouded her judgment. Whatever the cause, her refusal caused the prosecution's case to collapse. Without Edwina's cooperation, the charges against Danny Brown were dropped, allowing him to walk free despite overwhelming evidence of his guilt. The shock didn't end there. Just 2 weeks after surviving an attack planned by Danny, Edwina married him. For many, this decision defied understanding. How could a woman marry the man who had tried to kill her? The answer lies in the complexities of abusive relationships, a tangled web of fear, control, hope, and emotional dependence that can bind victims to their abusers. This marriage marked the beginning of an 11-year chapter that saw Edwina living with the man who had once sought to end her life. Though outward appearances suggested stability, the wounds, both visible and invisible, ran deep. The 2012 hit attempt was a brutal, nearly fatal turning point in Edwina Brown's story. It was a moment that revealed the lengths to which Danny Brown would go to control and silence her. Yet it was also a moment that showed Edwina's extraordinary will to survive, even when faced with death.
So we're responding right now for a report of a shooting victim. 2 gunshot victims. One's a CPR and the other one shot in back and she's alert. But this one, this is a CPR right now. Okay. And then you got this one with a gunshot wound to the back that's being addressed already. All right, we're on a scene of a multiple shooting. We have 2 gunshot victims. One's in the ambulance being treated by the EMTs and the paramedics. And the second victim's being treated by the fire department, and we're waiting. The second ambulance is on the way here now. Paramedics on the scene, they're assessing it, and they're treating both victims at this time. Is he stable? Yeah. Okay. Bullet's sitting right here in the front of us. All right.
For 11 years, Edwina lived under the same roof as Danny Brown, the man whose violent jealousy had nearly destroyed her. On the surface, life appeared stable. Edwina continued to raise her children and nurture her passion for dance. She remained deeply involved in the community she had built, coaching the Bejeweled Dance Company and supporting young girls through mentorship and discipline. She also maintained her role as a business owner, continuing to grow Bedoja's Beauty Boutique. To outsiders, it seemed she had overcome the darkest chapter of her life and was moving forward with purpose. But beneath this carefully maintained exterior, the reality was far different. There were subtle signs that something wasn't right, though few could say exactly what. Family members suspected that the cycle of control and abuse had not ended with the 2012 attack, but had instead retreated into the shadows. Edwina's strength was still there, but it was quieter now, masked by caution and fear. Living with someone who had already tried to kill you changes a person. Trauma runs deep, and recovery is rarely linear. For Edwina, the struggle to balance survival with motherhood, entrepreneurship, and community involvement was immense. The emotional scars from years of abuse, and from that fateful day, never fully healed. How does someone live with a person who once tried to kill them? Can abusers truly change, or do their actions define them forever? And what does it take for a victim to break free for good? Can someone really change after doing something like this? Or was Edwina living in silent fear? Drop your thoughts below. Your voice matters. March 27, 2023, was a day like many others on the surface. Quiet streets in Little Rock, Arkansas, and neighbors going about their routines. But inside the Brown family home, tension had been building. That afternoon, neighbors heard raised voices coming from the house. The argument between Edwina and Danny Brown grew louder, the shouting echoing through the neighborhood. The exact cause of their dispute remains unknown, but it was clear emotions were running high. What followed was a chilling repeat of a past nightmare. In a violent escalation, Danny pulled out a gun, a haunting reminder of the deadly attack Edwina had survived over a decade earlier. This time, there would be no hired hitmen. Danny fired multiple shots inside the home. Edwina was hit several times, collapsing under the weight of the violence she had fought so hard to escape. Her life was slipping away as neighbors frantically called for help, horrified by the sounds from next door. First responders arrived swiftly, their sirens cutting through the tense air. Paramedics found Edwina barely conscious, critically wounded, but still clinging to life. She was rushed to the hospital in an emergency, the hope for survival hanging by a thread. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Edwina Brown succumbed to her injuries shortly after arrival. The news hit the community like a devastating blow. A woman who had survived so much finally lost her battle. Shock and grief rippled through Little Rock. Friends, family, and neighbors struggled to comprehend how the cycle of violence had ended in tragedy once more. Many remembered Edwina's courage, her vibrant spirit, and the love she poured into her family and community. But there was also outrage. How had this been allowed to happen again? How could someone who had once tried to take a life be free and ultimately take that life themselves? Local residents mourned the loss of a woman who was more than a victim. She was a pillar of strength, a source of inspiration, and a symbol of resilience. Candlelight vigils and memorials were held as the community came together to honor her memory and raise awareness about the dangers of domestic violence. Edwina's children were left to carry the unbearable weight of loss and trauma, their mother taken by the very man who was supposed to protect them. Immediately after the shooting, Danny Brown fled the scene, disappearing into the night with a gun still in his possession. Authorities quickly classified him as armed and dangerous, issuing warnings to the public and launching a full-scale manhunt. The urgency was clear. A violent man on the run posed a serious threat not only to law enforcement, but to anyone who crossed his path. Danny's flight intensified fears in the community, already shaken by the loss of Edwina Brown. During the search, Danny made a chilling call to the police himself. He threatened to harm himself or others if he was cornered. This desperate act underscored the volatile and dangerous state of a man now fully aware that his freedom was slipping away. Over the course of several weeks, local police worked alongside U.S. Marshals and federal agents, combing through leads across state lines. Their efforts spanned multiple jurisdictions, requiring coordination and persistence to track down one of Arkansas's most wanted. Finally, the pursuit ended in Dallas, Texas, where Danny Brown was located and taken into custody without further incident. He was immediately extradited back to Arkansas, where he faced the full weight of the law. The charges against Danny Brown were severe, capital murder. Prosecutors made it clear they intended to seek the maximum penalty, reflecting both the brutality of the crime and the long history of violence associated with the case. Danny's arrest brought a measure of relief to a grieving community. Though Edwina's life could not be restored, the capture of her killer signaled that justice might finally be within reach.
He should be considered armed and highly dangerous.
On March 27th, around 4 in the afternoon, police say Danny Brown went to his estranged wife's house on Fairley Drive in Little Rock.
The information we have is that Danny Brown entered the house. I guess maybe an argument ensued. He allegedly shot his wife, and she later succumbed to those injuries at a nearby hospital.
It's been over a week since that happened, and police are looking to get Brown behind bars, including the U.S. Marshal's Office, who has been asked to help.
Well, of course, we want to do this as safely as possible. We don't want anyone to get hurt, including Danny Brown. Preferably, we'd rather Danny Brown just turn himself in, do the right thing.
Police have gotten close to arresting him, but they say he's made it clear he will not be taken in quietly.
One of our biggest tips, I guess, came from Danny Brown himself. He actually called the Little Rock Police Department, gave a statement to them, and then made the statement that he would basically either harm himself or harm others if he was ever cornered by, anyone, especially law enforcement.
The death of Edwina Brown left a void that no words can fully capture. Her children, 6 in total, were suddenly orphaned, forced to navigate a world without the mother who had fought so fiercely to protect them. The trauma they now carry is profound and heartbreaking, a reminder of the devastating ripple effects domestic violence leaves behind. For the girls and boys who had grown up watching their mother balance strength and vulnerability, the loss is incomprehensible. Edwina's role as a mother was central to her identity. She was fiercely protective, determined to provide a better life for her children despite the storm she weathered. Now, those children face a future marked by grief, unanswered questions, and the challenge of healing from wounds they did not cause. Legally, Danny Brown now faces the most serious charges available. Prosecutors are pursuing capital murder, with life imprisonment without the possibility of parole the likely outcome if convicted. The community, grieving yet seeking justice, watches closely as the case moves forward. Edwina Brown's death is a painful reminder that the cycle of domestic violence can have deadly consequences. But it is also a call to action, to better support survivors, to recognize the warning signs early, and to ensure that justice protects those who cannot protect themselves. Her legacy lives on in the lives she touched, the children she raised, and the young dancers she coached. Through remembrance and awareness, there is hope that no one else will have to suffer as she did. Edwina Brown's story is a powerful, heartbreaking reminder of the dangers that can come with reconciliation in abusive relationships. Despite surviving an attempt on her life, she chose to stay, and even marry, the man who had tried to kill her. This decision highlights a reality many survivors face, the complex and painful bond known as trauma bonding. It's a psychological tether that can make leaving or staying away feel impossible, even when the risk is life-threatening. Her story also exposes a critical gap in legal protections. When victims are unable or unwilling to testify, as Edwina was in her case, justice can falter. This leaves survivors vulnerable and perpetrators free, a tragic cycle that too often repeats itself. If you're watching this, remember, recognizing red flags is the first step toward safety. Jealousy, control, isolation, and threats are never signs of love. They are calls for help. There are resources available to protect and assist victims, such as the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE and local shelters that offer confidential support and safety planning. No one has to face this alone. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you or someone you love is in danger, don't wait. Reach out. There's help. There's hope. Edwina's story is not defined by the violence she endured, but by the light she carried despite it. Edwina's impact stretched far beyond her immediate family, touching a community, a dance team, and countless people who followed her journey online. Though her life was tragically cut short, Edwina's memory lives on as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the urgent need to break the cycle of abuse. Her life mattered. Her story deserves to be told, honored, and never forgotten. If Edwina's story moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Dark Trace Crime Stories. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light and raise awareness about domestic violence. What do you think can be done to better protect survivors? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. Together, we can honor victims like Edwina by pushing for change and preventing future tragedies. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and stay aware.